Welcome to a Father's Flame podcast today. I want to introduce my friend and guest, Cody Freeland. Thanks for joining us today.
What's up, guys? I'm happy to be here. Super stoked to be on this podcast.
So I've met Cody more in like an entrepreneur mastermind, but Cody, why don't you give your intro of like who you are, where you come from, some of your expertise?
Sure. So a snapshot of who I am, I guess. Uh, Probably the easiest definition would be martial artist. I started when I was 5 years old. You basically had ADHD, and my dad didn't necessarily want me on prescription medicine at the time, which I supported, and so he signed me up for a very strict karate program to teach me discipline. And back then, things were different. Instructors could hit kids, and the lawsuit happened, and it was kind of like it's just that was karate training. But started when I was 5, loved it. Was blessed to do karate under a really prestigious instructor, and whose son ended up fighting on a world class level, and stayed there until I was like 21 or 22. Left, started an MMA school. Back when MMA was just getting big, had a friend who was a jiu-jitsu guy, and um, kind of got lucky with some fighters that came to me. Was able to coach a couple people in the UFC, and one of my fighters fought for the title, and so that was a cool experience. Unfortunately, we came a little short, but that was still it was a fun experience. And still teach kids karate. I still teach MMA guys and gals, but kind of transitioned over a couple years ago to where I had a friend of mine who is a business entrepreneur, and pretty successful at that. And he was having some problems mentally and trying to get past something, and he kind of asked my opinion on it, and to me, it was a simple solution. And so I kind of coached him through it, and he said, "Man, how did you do that so quickly?" I was like, "What do you mean? This is like I coach people to go fight one another. You know, coaching people is coaching people. Getting them to do something is just getting them. It's just human behavior." Um, and so he was like, "Man, if you transitioned your skill set from teaching people how to fight to teaching people, just how to be more disciplined and kind of teaching and just coaching from a business aspect, you would be far more profitable." And so that kind of got my business mind spinning. And From there, I just kind of met a couple mentors. Michael Byers, one of them, which got me into acquisitionpreneur, and that's kind of where I met you. And I keep going to different masterminds. I know you had Michael Marcial on with Revolt. I'm part of that as well. And I just connect with high level entrepreneurs and really see how I can help them and how they can help me, and kind of build a vision together.
Oh, that's great. I like that you're using skill set you kind of already had and you developed with something that was fun that your dad just made you do. And that's becoming that's
I mean, I grew
becoming,
up watching Chuck
new
Norris,
journey.
so like he was my
Yeah.
hero. Like I wanted to be Walker Texas Ranger. Um, and to be on, to be fair, back then I was so young. I'm 36 now, and so ADHD was kind of um, really new,
Sure.
and they didn't really have the medicine dialed in, and so I don't fault them at all. Some of the medicine they were giving kids back then were basically making them drool on themselves, and um, so I'm actually happy he did what he did, and it's given me a lifelong career of really just fulfillment. Coaching people, whether it's they ever defend themselves or not. Like for sure, if some kid comes to me and they got bullied at school and they say, "Coach, I was able to defend myself," that's super gratifying. But that doesn't happen as often as people think. It's really seeing someone's confidence level go up and being a part of that journey. I mean, that's just one of the most fulfilling things there is, and so martial arts is just one of the best vehicles to do it. But there's a lot of other avenues, obviously, masterminds, business coaching, um, different skill sets for different people are going to bring different value. But it's just a really fulfilling thing to be able to help another human being achieve something they're set out to do. And you know be there when it kind of all clicks to be together and be a part of things. So, for some people that's not super fulfilling, I'm sure, but for me that's a very um, very fulfilling process.
Interesting. Well, let's dive into the um, combat sports part of this and being a coach there. I have a I guess what are your thoughts on like should like every man probably have some of these skills that you pretty much coach and do? Like where do you kind of fit martial arts and whatever the avenue that is because there's different types, but how does that fit into like I guess just a manhood even?
Yeah, that's a that's a loaded question. I
Yeah.
personally, the short answer would be yeah. I think you should do something that pushes you um, to have confidence in yourself, to force to be humbled when someone else gets the better of you, and that's a big part of it. Um,
Hmm.
it there's a lot of things you can do that cover the boxes. For me, martial arts just checks so many boxes of being a man, or I shouldn't say being a man because I don't want to objectify being a man as something or something not. But to me, it checks so many boxes of what's healthy for
Yeah.
men. And so you get the social dynamic, you get to be around other men, and um, you build trust because you have guys that are literally trying to choke the life out of you, and all you're doing I mean, you literally get caught in a submission and you tap them, and they completely let you go. And that's a subconscious level of trust that you know you realize that that person could have killed you, and they didn't. They're just training, and so that's an aspect of it that also builds humbleness. Um, it more than anything makes you master your mind, and you learn that one of the first principles that you learn in martial arts is to not beat yourself. And like that's you can do it in other things for sure, but martial arts just is it's just right. It just cuts right to it. Um,
What do you mean by that?
so um, when a lot of new guys come in, let's say you're an athletic guy, gal, and you come in to train, and let's just use jujitsu for this time's sake. There's a lot of different arts, but jujitsu is kind of the one that a lot of people are doing, and I would even it'd be the one I would suggest for people to do if you're business minded and you're not trying to like get hurt. It allows you to train really really intensely without without the injuries. I shouldn't say that. You could get hurt obviously, but
Okay.
it's not like you're gonna get punched in the face and have a black eye and have to go to work the next day. Um, essentially, usually you get caught in something, you tap, and then it's over. You don't actually get hurt, and so it's the safer martial arts. It's also very cerebral art. Um, so what I mean by that is you get these guys that are very capable or gals that are very capable, and they come in and they go really really hard, and they don't understand why they're getting tired so fast. Like they're like, I do CrossFit, or I run, or I do this, or I do that, I lift weights. I'm so tired, and it's because it's not that you're out of shape; it's that you're fighting yourself. When your central nervous system locks up, it's kind of like flexing your arm. Like when you flex, right? You're pulling your bicep, but you're also pushing your tricep, and that's what locks your hand in place, right? And so no matter how strong your bicep is, your triceps fighting it just as the same strength, or vice versa. So when a lot of people get into martial arts, they clench up, they get nervous. Their nervous system takes over, their stress system takes over. They clamp up, and then before long, they're not breathing, they're not thinking,
Oh.
and they're caught in like a survival mode. And
Hmm.
so you can do that in a lot of things for sure, but to me, like fighting just does it the quickest. And there's always levels to where when you're training, you need three partners. You need the guy that smashes you, you just get destroyed by, and then so you can work on your defense, and it's to teach you to be humble, and to teach you to continue to learn to survive even when things are bad. Keep moving. This too shall pass, kind of thing. You should roll with somebody that you can smash. That you're a little bit better than, that you can practice your offense on. You can be the hammer. You can build confidence through yourself. You can kind of go through and map out your moves and not feel the stress of things and feel that like ego side of it. Um, and then you need the guy that's basically the same skill set as you, to where you can win 50% of the time. And there is no like offense. It's just you're going, and it puts you into a flow state to where you're not really planning out what you're doing. It's just you're going in the moment. And to me, I think you need those three people to kind of teach you the aspects of jujitsu, but also the aspects of life. And so um, again, you can find mentors to teach you all those things. You could
Sure.
go out and find a mentor to humble you. Like you could be worth $10 million. Go find a billionaire mentor, and they're gonna humble you real quick. They're gonna pull you up to a house that's worth $40 million, and all of a sudden you're 10 million bucks. Doesn't look like anything. And that's one way to do it. There's a lot of ways to be humbled. There's ways you can go about getting confidence. There's like where you any type of sport or competition, even like being at work and climbing up in sales, and you can build confidence that way. There's ways that you can get into flow states and really kind of allow you what and your knowledge to take over and stuff. But I personally haven't found something outside of martial arts that does everything. Now, granted, I haven't looked, so I'm sure there's people out there that have their own things. I know that martial arts works for me. I know that it's the one thing that when I find um, very successful businessmen, men that have made millions of dollars, hundreds of millions of dollars in some cases, it's the one place they can come and they're equal. And to a high value man, uh, sometimes, and this is going to sound crazy, but sometimes it's a little exhausting being at the top and always having to answer the questions and always having to be the best. And while you have confidence in who you are, sometimes it's imposter syndrome. Sometimes it's false confidence. You don't know, but I've seen guys come in that have that level of success that get so much out of martial arts. It changes who they are from a confidence standpoint. It changes their life as to what they see as important to them. It changes their perspective of who they are as a person. And you're talking about somebody who's found success in like the greatest success financially you can find. And then I've seen that same thing happen with a drug addict. I've seen that same thing happen with a homeless person. I've seen that same thing happen with a 11-year-old who's getting bullied at school, who's a little bit overweight. And so it's a vehicle that I've been a part of and that I've seen that allows people to recreate themselves no matter what their level of success has been, or and it's all from your own self-image, because let's say that you have an outstanding self-image. Well, that might be your downfall to a point, you know? And so you come into jiu-jitsu, you get humbled a little bit, and it allows you to rebirth and have a new self-image and continue to grow.
Mm.
Um, you might have a very poor self-image, which obviously will hold you back. Come into jiu-jitsu, train, all of a sudden you start getting the better of somebody, and no matter what, you're forced to recognize that you're getting better, which instills confidence. So
Yeah.
it's just a tried and true vehicle is what I'll say, I guess.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's been around thousands of years, really, right? And almost every, I think, ancient cultures like had
Yeah,
even martial art, whatever. I don't even know what they called back then, but a martial art or a fighting technique, or
yeah.
right.
I kind of
Um,
pair like three things together. I say that since the dawn of time, there's always been three things, which is spirituality of some sort, right? Religion, whatever, spirituality of some sort. Why are we here? There's been music of some sort, right? It's basically like emotions in a sense form. And then fighting, and they'll be around forever, and they're I think they're part of the human DNA. I don't know. I can't explain it more than that, but I think those three things were they've been around forever and they'll be around forever.
Well, I mean, you go pretty much just Genesis chapter 1, 2, or 3 from my perspective. It's like, dude, you got spiritual, where your creation, you have, them making bad decisions and bringing in sin, but then their children, like, boom, get off to just fighting each other, Cain versus Abel. And then it talks about, I feel like it's only within a couple chapters, like this guy, certain dude, just, I thought it was Lamech or somebody that really brought in fighting and making weapons even. Um, And so, yeah, no, you see that at least even from the Christian perspective, just right away that
Mm-hmm.
there is that aspect and music. And then as soon as you said music, I didn't think of that, but spiritual music and fighting, to me, that sounds like, I don't know if you know much about King David, but the dude like wrote all these psalms, but he's the guy who's like taking out giants, but he's attacking like him and his mighty men. These warriors were like savage, it sounds like, on the battlefield, like just
Yeah.
untouchable. um
So a lot of people don't realize, like Socrates, like a lot of
mhm.
these great philosophers back in the day were all savages, like
He
warriors,
was.
man. Like just yeah, like it's the most of them, and it's because to not and I obviously I want to be very clear. I'm never coming even close to being like somebody that's like a real strong bad dude in the sense of like you know being tough. But like you think back in the day, like you're going to war and you're going to take another man's life. You have to really contemplate life. You have to contemplate what it
Mhm.
is you're taking. You have to contemplate these things, and when
Or you
you've
might lose
been
your
there, it's
life.
exactly when you've been there and it's been
Yeah,
you or them, and you've been on the battlefield and you've come out victorious. You've also thought about what you're going to lose and what that is, and you dive into these deep thoughts, and because you go through these ego battles to where you have this idea of yourself and then it gets threatened, but you have to push through, so you end up killing that ego off and becoming something new, and you're constantly forcing that. You end up having so many more perspectives on what it means to live, where
sure.
some people just kind of get caught in a rut and they just do the same things every single day, and for your psyche that's easy to just get caught in and just think you're that thing over and over. But when you're training martial arts, even if you do jujitsu every day and you're rolling every single day, well, you're rolling a different person, and maybe it's the same person, but they're doing something different. It's a different time. It's never the same thing. So it just kind of always, you know, keeps you evolving.
Wow. So you've been coaching for just several years. You've probably coached, I don't know, hundreds of kids or people. Let's dig into that a little bit, that coaching
Sure.
aspect, and kind of what you've learned through seeing like so many people's kids, right? Because you get a variety. Like you get, I'm sure there's wealthy kids, there's everything in between, right? And so
Oh yeah.
let's let's talk on that a little bit.
Well, um, it's super sad, right? Because the kids that do best, um, for the most part, I would say like 7 out of 10 kids that really, really, really perform well and prevail usually have very supportive parents. Um, and 3 out of 10 kids that do really, really well have parents that aren't in the picture at all. Like they might drop them off. I shouldn't say aren't in the picture at all. They might drop them off at the door. They don't come in. Sometimes they're not in the picture at all. Sometimes it's grandma and grandpa raising them, and it's just kind of their only outlet to perform and do well. But a lot of the kids that come in really, this is going to break a lot of parents out there, but it's just the truth. A lot of these kids that come in want one thing and one thing only, and it's attention. And I think as parents, we usually know that. Um, but it's sometimes tough in the moment to understand how important it is because they are going to get attention. It's not. It's not will they get it? They will get it. It's just a matter of how. And they can either get it by you voluntarily giving it to them and pouring love into them and you know being there for them, or they can get it by creating um, havoc and making you pay attention to them. So I get parents that come in all the time, and before I was a parent, I couldn't say this, but now that I'm a parent, I feel justified. I can kind of say it, but knock on wood, of course. But you know, I'd say half the kids that come to me, it's because of behavior things. Mom and dad are having issues with them at home, and they need to be disciplined. They need to learn discipline. The other half's confidence, right? And out of all the kids that come to me for discipline, it's almost always that the parents need to learn how to be parents. And
Mm.
or I shouldn't let me backtrack that. Sometimes it's not learn how to be parents. Sometimes it really is a situation, right? Like dad's not around, mom's working 2 jobs, grandma's helping out, and it's just like it's all they can do to stay afloat. And you know, and honestly, that's the situations I like to be around. I like to be there because then that's a gap that I feel like I can kind of act as a wedge in. I can kind of be that manly, masculine, positive influence in their life, and usually that's one of the 3 out of 10 kids that kind of turns out to be a success. And it's because they're looking for leadership. They're looking for someone that just wants them to do well in life and believes they can. And whether it's true or not that their parents believe that they can do stuff or not, they don't believe it anymore. And so
Mm.
um, being that coach, and they come in, it's like I tell them all this thing every time. Like we start class, and I'll call the kids in, and one of the things I do is I say concentrate. And when I say concentrate, they all drop. It looks like something out of a ninja movie, man. They all drop down on one knee. They scream, "Yes, sir," and they have to look, listen, and be quiet. And if they don't, like if one kid messes up, the whole class gets push-ups. And so they're very strict about it, and they govern themselves really well with it. So, but I call them in, I say concentrate. They all drop down. I tell them all, like if one of them's upset or something, I say, listen, I don't care what you're going through. I don't care how school went. I don't care how the car ride over here went. I don't care how home life's going. None of it matters. When you're on this mat, the only thing that matters is martial arts and your effort. I don't care about the results. I don't care. It's literally your effort because you control it, that and your attitude. And so I I like to try to clear the space for them and say, hey, listen, like doesn't matter what you've been told before this. Like this is how I see you. And then you know every kid's their own individual, but you kind of start learning what kids needs what. Some kids have learned the role of underperforming to get attention. So
Mm.
like the way they get attention is to not do well, and their parents know they could do better, so their parents hound into them. You could do better. What are you doing? Well, cool, that's fine. I'll underperform so you look at me, because when I perform well, that's your expectations, and well, you ignore me. So you can see that some kids underperform because they really don't believe they can do things, right? And those are the kids that usually have been talked down to, and um, you know, whatever you want to call it, uh, conditioned to believe they're not good at something or that they shouldn't be successful. Then you have some kids that it's the opposite, right? They have some kids that they don't care because they know that their parents love them unconditionally. And it's like,
Mm.
listen, man, like I'm here, I'm doing this thing, but like if I fail my test, if I if I do this, if I do that, like I'm gonna go over there and mom and dad got me, and it doesn't matter. Like I can run off in the middle of class. Like if Coach Cody tells me like hey, I got to drop down and do push-ups, I can run over to mom and dad and tell them I don't want to, and mom and dad are going to be there for me. Um, and so I never like tell parents what they should and shouldn't do. Um, I will if they ask me, hey coach, should he come over here in the middle? I say, look, he come over there if he wants. I'll never tell a kid he can't go to his mom and dad, but like he's still gonna have to do the push-ups. And if you decide for him that he's not gonna do the push-ups, well then you've decided for him that I'm also not his karate coach. Because if I don't have authority in my own gym, well then what am I doing? And
Yeah.
so usually parents they're always on board with like, okay. And a lot of times parents will even know, like they'll even know it's their fault. They're like, hey coach, I'm sorry, I see him, he's struggling, and what should I do? And I said, well, just go downstairs and watch on the TV. um, because sometimes the hardest thing for us to do as a parent is to watch our kids fail, because we think they feel as if they're suffering. We think they feel shame. We think they feel all these things that we would feel in that moment, but we forget they haven't been taught to feel those things yet. And a lot of times, us assuming they're going to feel it, we create a void. And so we create opportunities down the road to kind of instill those things into them. And the best thing we can do is sit there, watch our kids, enjoy that they're trying to achieve things. And if they fail, be there to love them afterwards. Be there to encourage them. Be there to help them. Don't be there to push them and mold them and try your best to enforce that they have to be the best, because that's enforcing that you're only going to love them if they do their bst, right? That's not
Mm.
healthy, right? And so, like, that's why you pay the coach. That's one of my biggest things. Like, that's why you pay the coach, so you can be the parent.
Wow.
And sometimes as parents, if we're pushing our child to do something, I'll give you an example. This is the best way I can do this. I'll give you an example. So I have a dad that's like, his kids do martial arts, and great family, like great family, and he loves his kid to death, loves him to death, and he he pushes him to like be tougher, be stronger, be harder, all these things. Um, and so he kind of got him signed up, and we started having him compete a while back, but one of the first competitions he went to, the dad was so stressed out, and he's like, I've been pushing him this, he doesn't want to lose, da, da, da. And I noticed the kid starts regressing. Kid starts getting worse at jiu-jitsu, starts not wanting to roll with the get good kids, starts like it really starts mattering to him if he wins or loses in the gym, and like he just kind of starts dissolving. And so I'm like, what's going on? So I go to the kid and I say, what's going on? What's going on? And a lot of times they'll open up to me, and they'll, because I'll kind of nudge them that direction. And well, I don't know. I said, well, do you want to compete? And he was like, I don't know. I said, well, if you don't want to compete, I'll go tell your dad you're not going to do it. I said, I'm not going to have you go out there if you don't want to do it. Like, competition's a serious thing. He said, well, no, I want to compete. I said, what's the problem then? Are you scared if you lose that you're like, no one's going to, what is it? And so basically comes to me that his dad's putting a bunch of pressure on him, and so I go to his dad and I just kind of, I have to be very careful how I do this, but I go to his dad and I'm talking to him and I'm like, did you ever as a kid like have a competition and fail, and like your dad be super disappointed in you? He said, yeah, absolutely. I played sports. I I was on this team. My dad came and watched me. I didn't have a good game. He never came back. Yada yada yada. I'm like, okay. So you have a fear that like if you don't do well, like your dad's not gonna appreciate you. And I was like, so you're like forcing that fear on your kid. I was like, are you gonna not love your kid if he doesn't win? He was like, well, of course not. I said, well, do you understand that you're still coming at it from the same energy though? Like that's a scar your dad put on you as a kid. And while you're doing the opposite of it, you're assuming that your kid is worried about not impressing you. He doesn't understand any of that now, but you're making him worry about not impressing you by all the extra pressure you're putting on him in the beginning. So you're still instilling the same thing that you didn't want your dad to do to you. and he was like, and he stopped in the moment, and ever since then his kid's been competing, and they have a great relationship with it, and his dad's able to sit back and really use his child's experience not as a moment to live vicariously through him in the sense of like, oh, you won, let me love you like my dad would have loved me if I won, but on the reverse side of it, which is sit there and watch this kid compete and give it his best and deal with his own trauma while doing it, using his kid's experience to really watch his own thoughts and his own experiences come back up in these childhood traumas that he wants to feel defensive of, and what we don't understand is we start pushing on our kids from just a different angle, and so he's been able to share that how helpful that's been, and I think that's something a lot of parents would benefit from understanding is sometimes we get these insecurities that we assume our kids have, and we don't understand that there's our insecurities, and that's why we assume other people have them. And then by assuming our kid has them, we create opportunities for our kid to have them. I know that
Wow.
sounds a little bit weird and out there, but it's the law of duality and things being binary. If we're acting in a way because of a certain thing, our actions are still tied to that thing. So if we're parenting and we're saying I'm never going to be anything like my dad, right? While your dad might have been like abusive or whatever, if we're basing how we parent off of the bad experience we had from our parent, we're still going to subconsciously inflict the same feeling that we got from our parent. It's just going to be from the other end of the spectrum, So um, that's kind of one thing that I see a lot in parents. And I know I went a long way, Ray, to say that, but the one thing I see a lot in parents is they are so worried about their kids having their insecurities that they force their insecurities on their kids.
That's deep.
So
Yeah, you're
it
hitting
is.
on belief that the parent has no clue they're doing that, but they are programmed that way from their own experiences, man. That's so interesting that you brought that up.
Yeah, it's a subconscious thing, and I mean every parent's done it, right? Every parent's
Mhm.
had that gut wrench reaction. Our kid does something, we yell at them, and then 30 minutes later we're sitting there, our kid's pouting in the corner, and we go and we apologize, and of course we're like, hey, I'm so sorry, and we think, what did I do that for? Like, why did I do that? And then if you really track back, like you didn't want to, you feel bad about it. It was just a reaction. So where did that reaction come from? Well, it probably came from somebody did that to me when I was a kid, and
Mhm.
my subconscious mind just thinks that's the reaction there. And now I've got to do a lot of work to where anytime I feel that gut wrench reaction, that I've just got to be super aware that I don't imprint that on my son. If it's not something that I consciously have put a lot of thought of and wanted to like instill on him and say to him, it's it's almost like irresponsible, because from birth to seven, like what you say to them becomes their internal thoughts they later have in life. And to freak out on your kid and say something your parent said to you, like, what are you doing, kid? Are you not thinking? Are you dumb? And you didn't mean to say that, but that's what your parents said to you. And you got through it, but you really didn't, because you're still you see. And so I just
Yeah.
think that not enough parents sit down and just really think through their own stuff and understand that like that child is innocent. They don't know what triggers you. And if something triggers you, that is nature's way of giving you a heads up saying, hey, look, this is something you should look into. Because that
Mm.
this little innocent child that you created, like they had. And then the crazy thing is we actually teach them to trigger us, right? Because we'll teach them. it's it's a crazy map of life. You start studying the subconscious and how we start training. Like a lot of times, the things that triggers about our kids are things we taught them, because really they're things that trigger us about us, right? Our kids do it out of emulation. Our kids see us do something, and so they're like, "Oh my god, I want to be mom. I want to be dad. So they start impersonating us, and they start trying to be like us. And then the things we hate of ourselves, we start seeing come out in our kid, and all of a sudden we're like, "Whoa, whoa, whoa! Stop, stop, stop!" And we think that what we should do is go after the results of what's happening. And a lot of parents don't take a second and say, "Wait a second, this is the fruits. I've got to focus on the roots. I I've got to, because now they're not doing what I'm saying. So now if I see something I've already programmed to do and I overreact towards it, well, now I'm just teaching them to overreact. So I really have to just like stop in the moment and think,
So good.
what do I want them to feel, and what do I want them to experience in life? And am I doing them justice in this? And sometimes I do want my kids to feel a little bit disheartened. Sometimes I do want my kids to feel a little bit let down, and I think it's good for them. But am I doing it on purpose? And am I
Hmm.
mindful about it? Am I very mindful of my words? And so those are just things that I notice, and I hear parents talk to me about, and they say, "Hey, I find myself just getting so angry with them," and then after I'm angry with them, I find myself really, really remorseful towards myself for being angry with them, because they don't know any better, and it's just in that moment, you know, you get attacked. And I listened to this thing with Jocko Willick, and he said that anytime I feel threatened, anytime I feel like I should get defensive and fight, and I, I understand right away it's my ego. And I have to take a moment and think, why is my ego being attacked? Like, why do I feel the need to protect myself here? Is it because of this 5, 6 year old child that's saying this to me right now, or is it someone else that imprinted on me along the way? And it's probably not this child. So it
Exactly.
gives me a second to stop and reprogram myself, and be really mindful with my child, and through being really mindful with your child, you get to be really mindful with your inner child. And so it's all kind of this like trauma therapy, if you'll accept that everything that triggers you about your kid is, in fact, you or your spouse, one of the two.
No, that's good. I You brought up some memories of my own self. Like think I saw seeing my oldest son kind of react in ways that he was copying like how I reacted to him, overreacting like with anger. What, you know what I mean? And I'm like, then I'm seeing him do the thing I did. You know what I mean? To his like little brother, I'm like, I created that. I showed him that. I responded because whatever happened in them years ago, even like that's how I taught him, and I mentioned Jocko Willick's book a lot, like Extreme
Extreme
Ownership,
ownership. Yeah.
and I've pretty much brought up this is probably the third or fourth time on this podcast, but it's just mind boggling to say when he does that, that's my fault. That's that fruit. Like I planted that there. I nurtured that. And this is sad to say, like, this is all negative things to me. And this is like, I don't want to be like that. And I was like that more in the past. And I'm growing as a man and shedding those pieces off. Um, so I love what you're talking about. It's deep and it makes me want to, question and ask actually. So like, what did you say that proper way to like, um, push kids like in sports, right? And be there for them. Like, cause there has to be this like proper amount of praise, but not
Hmm.
everything can be praised. Like, cause you're messing up like, and just
Yeah.
actual, like, hey, this was wrong. And then, I believe too, like, hey man, you need to listen to the coach. Like, uh, you, I want to give you unconditional love. There's no doubt, but not like when you're in the sports game. I'm not want to come coddle you and like, like
Yeah.
unless you really need it, but not like every time. But like you should grow out of that. So, what is like a healthier? I guess I'm talking about parenting. Like how do parents who put their kids in martial arts? Like what's like the healthiest like things you've seen in
So I
strategy?
think it's a couple things, right? Like, personally, I will I probably won't sign my child up for like public baseball, right? Not because I don't want him to play baseball, but because I don't have any control as to who's his coach going to be,
Yeah.
and so I think it's very important to understand that our children, especially around 13 years old, like they're not supposed to listen to us anymore. Like they're supposed to defy us. They're supposed to like set up their own path. And from 13 to 24, it's like it's. I heard a podcast with Dave Asprey talking about it. And it's like it or actually might have been Jordan Peterson. It was a podcast, somebody, but he's talking about how like DNA wise, we're set to like despise our parents, so we don't inbreed. So from 13 to 24, like biologically, the breeding years is what the scientists say. Like they they're designed to not listen to their parents. So it's super important that you put role models in their life that you agree with. And
Mm.
so the parents that I generally see over the years that have had healthy relationships with their children, whose children have gone on to be successful. I mean, because at this point, there's kids that have kids that I've taught karate to, and I can tell you this: the parents that are overly either way, the parents that are overly committed, make the kid the best. My kid's got to do this, and this, push, push, push. Their kid might be really, really good at martial arts, but the relationship is usually not. And it might look good on the surface for years, but down the road, it's it's kind of what their whole relationship is built on. It's like unless you're going to be the karate instructor and the karate son, like that might not work. Um, and so what I usually see is it's the parents that understand they need to believe in the coach. They need to believe in what the kid's learning. Um, and if they want to watch, they sit off and they watch. And they're supportive if something is needed. Uh, they have their kid there. If there's a tournament and their kid wants to do it, they get them there. They support, but they don't push. They, you know, and look, karate instructors. I've seen some of the best parents I've seen. Their kid doesn't want to do karate anymore, and they don't do karate anymore.
Yeah.
But they raise successful kids. They take them off and they do something else, and they find what that kid is interested in, and they allow that kid to learn the lessons of life through living. So often we try to have the shortcut of like telling people the secret, telling people the answer, telling people what's going to happen. Hey, listen, that guy's going to screw you over. Hey, listen, this is what's going to happen. Hey, it doesn't do any good. It just makes us the bad person. And unfortunately, even if we do save them from it that time, it's going to happen to them again because they didn't learn the lesson. And so, to me, what good parenting looks like is being incredibly loving, incredibly supportive, and having boundaries to where it's like, hey, I accept these things, I don't accept these things, and I'm going to love you through the process. But here's love, here's boundaries, and then always teaching their kids how to aspire to be what they want to be. Like, what are your goals? What do you want from this? And letting their kids like one of the this you know what this is business, and we've been talking a lot about fathers and stuff, but
Yeah.
from business side of point, like if you go to employees, you go to kids, one of the best things you can do is let them set their own goals, right? Like go to them and say, hey, what do you want to achieve? When do you think you're going to achieve it? Why do you want to achieve this? How are you going to go about achieving it? Okay, when you achieve it, what do you want to be compensated? What is this worth? What should you get from this? And now all of a sudden, it's all things they identify with, right? Because sometimes we look at an employee and we're like, oh, if you do that, I'd give you $5 raise. But they don't identify with $5. They don't think they're worth that. So it's too much for them. That's not who they identify with, and it's too much of a jump. And it's like, oh no, maybe they just wanted $1.50 raise. And while you wanted to give them more, they won't achieve it because they didn't identify with it. So by you letting them set their goals, their timelines,
Hmm.
and what they're going to get, like I do this with my 4-year-old kid. You know what he says he wants sometimes? Half the time, gummy bears. Dude, you could have said you wanted $25. You could have said you wanted a four-wheeler. You know what I mean? Like, obviously it's got to be reasonable what you're going after, but like
Yeah.
you could have said anything. But what motivates him right now at 4 years old is gummy bears. So that's what motivates him. So I've learned, um, that's one of the best ways to go about things is really just talking to your kids, not assuming they need to know anything. Like, and if your kid's lacking something, if you expose them to enough things, they'll learn it. You know, it's
Yeah.
it's it's when you double down on just trying to fix that one thing that then you get a lot of resistance towards it. And then you end up instilling the one thing you wanted to fix because they double down and they kind of set their ways based around what you're telling them not to do. So um,
That's
I think that
interesting.
I think that sales would be good for parents, like learning how to persuade people and learning the art of persuasion
Yeah.
um, and getting kids to, like, when you go into sales, right? Like, sales tactic, old sales tactics is like, hey, this is what you need to do. This is your problem. I'm a solution. This is the answer. Buy, buy, buy. It doesn't work, right? The new way of selling is it's really just the art of persuasion and finding people's problems and letting them solve them in the conversation with you and being there to say,
Let
yeah,
them solve it.
we have.
Yeah.
Let them, so that, because if you're selling like a mastermind course or you're anything, and what's going to happen is they're gonna sit there and tell you, like, what I really need is accountability. What I really need and if you ask the questions in the right way and you lead them down the right path, they're going to tell you what their limiting belief is. They're going to say, hey, this is why I'm currently not doing it. And you say, okay, cool. And then you say, this is why. Here's proof of how we've helped people do that thing you're not doing, right? And eventually they'll tell you, well, what I need is that product. And then you give that person an opportunity, and it's honestly, it's, as salespeople, this is like one of the, I think a lot of salespeople get the wrong idea about, like, oh, sales is one of the nicest things you can do for a human being, because when you truly sell somebody on something, what you're allowing them to do is to buy a product to eliminate a limiting belief. And it literally, if you sell them right, you can really change the belief they have in their head that's limiting to being fixed by the product you have, which gives them a chance to believe in themselves. So it really is one of the nicest things you can do for somebody. And I think parenting and getting kids to talk themselves into making the right decision that you already wanted them to make, but you not doing it for them, and you really being able to step back and letting them have that moment of thinking they're the genius, that they figured everything out, and because so many parents want to prove to their kids they're smarter than them. It's like, no, I don't care if my kid thinks I'm smarter than him. I want my kid to know how smart he is. I want my kid to have
That's
confidence in
good.
his abilities. So, you know,
I like how you're flowing over like this structure. Oh, you still there, Cody? All right, we're gonna have to
oh, there we
pause.
go. Sorry.
Oh, you're back. I like how you're kind of showing how like this framework or this structure, like with parenting and kids, like it also works in business, right? And you said something earlier that um, that you should have three types of people that you're like training with. Someone above you, about your level, and below you. And another guest, Larry Hagner of the Dad Edge, he said that in life, though, and you kind of mentioned this too. Like, if you want to be humbled, and you're a $10 million guy, go meet a billionaire. But he said you should always be
Yeah.
working with someone that's above you, right? They should have someone in your life, someone at your level that you're helping, help someone above you, and then but be helping someone also below you that getting up to where you want to be. And so that's challenging, right? And it's in the sense of like, where do I want to be as like a man and a businessman and a family man? Um, I need to find those guys above me, right? And
Yeah.
then also help these guys. And that's kind of the podcast. Help these guys that are where I'm at, or they're above me, and I'm getting to talk to them. And then this also helps that guy behind us, or not below us, but maybe we should just say behind in time or
Well,
skill.
I even like to say that is us, So
Yeah.
if, let's say there's only 26 problems, there's A through Z in problems, right? And let's say we're all a bunch of 30-year-olds and there's 26 of us, right? Well, by the time that we're 30 years old, we've figured out a solution to one of those problems. I might have figured out problem A, you might have figured out problem B, so on and so forth.
Yeah.
And it could be that at 64 you've only figured out one or two. It doesn't matter. But the point is that I can learn. I might learn a lesson from somebody who's younger than I am that they might only have learned and figured out 5 or 6 of the problems in life, and I might have figured out 20 of them. But they might teach me a lesson that I haven't learned yet. I can learn from anybody, and so that's to me why I'm so obsessed. I told you earlier, I'm in a bunch of masterminds, and I believe in it because
Yeah.
it's it's a place that it's like a fraternity. It's a place that you can find the guy that's here. You can find a couple friends that are like here and like you love each other, but like, hey man, I did a million last year. Oh, you did 1.1? Dude, I'm doing 1.5 next year. Like I'm gonna be like, and it's healthy because if I get to 2 million and you're still at one, well, I'm gonna go back and be like, dude, this is what I did. Like because I want you to catch up now because I want to compete again. And at the same time, you're gonna find the guy that hasn't bought his business yet. That was you 5 years ago, and what he
Yeah.
might teach you is how grateful you should be because in the moment of you being stressed and you just got that deal and you're retraining your team and you're having to re-implement different business strategies and things are changing and all that hype and funness of buying that new business is gone and now it's the implementation part and it's the stress of hey I've got to pay these bills and I've also got to grow things and well, in that moment, it's really easy to get caught up and be like, I'm so stressed. And then all of a sudden, you're helping Gary over here, who's still working 9 to 5. He's still at the fire department. He's
Yeah.
making $60,000 a year, and and he's just, dude, I just can't wait to work for myself. I'm gonna make the jump, and you're pouring into him now. And in that moment, you realize how grateful you are to have the struggle you have right now, and how grateful you are to be where you're at. And at the same time, you can look at Michael over here, who's 10 years ahead of you and you see him and he's got his feet up and he's going on a vacation every other weekend in his airplane and you're like man that's where I'm going and it's possible because proximity's power right that's Marshall
Yeah.
Silver it's the ability like I'm right there I can feel it I'm next to you I know I can achieve it and so I think it's super important that men find that again just the shameless pitch jiu-jitsu does that you get on the mats you're
Yeah.
rolling people you might be rolling the millionaire you might be rolling the pilot you might be rolling the doctor you have no idea who you're rolling with it's all walks of life and um so I think you got to find that community somehow and those
Yeah.
three people in your life are so important and family can really lock that down for you if you have a good family you got grandpa right? Grandpa is the guy
Yeah.
you should be looking up to,
It's
ideally.
a lot of wisdom,
You got dad,
hopefully.
which is you, and then you got the kid, which is the person you should be pulling up, and then you got your
Yeah.
brother, who's uncle that you're really competing with, that you're trying to, you're trying you're trying to build the
That's
family legacy,
interesting.
and
Yeah.
so you kind of have all those in the family if you're lucky enough to have them, but not all of us have the grandfather to look up to, not all of us have the dad to look up to, so
That's a good point. But those gaps can get filled in with other people, right? And uh, something I did want to kind of go back to was so sometimes I take the framework of family and like business, and it's like all that I learn in business and structure and like all these neat things of how a business really runs. And it's like, have you ever just like implemented that strategy at home? Because with an employee, I wouldn't try to like control his life as much as I have tried to control my kids. And it's like, this is my house. This respect me. No, I didn't say that exactly, but pretty dang close. But like, I wouldn't,
I
I wouldn't
insist.
blow up at work. Uh,
Sure.
and it's like, just bring the structure over. And it's like, I know you mentioned like, don't try to tell your kid everything. And I think there's an aspect to that's true, but then there's an aspect that, my dad didn't tell me a whole lot. And it's like, if I think I would want him to tell me and then show me. It's like, okay, tell me and then let me go do it. and then tell me how I messed up. And then it's kind of like how you would coach somebody, like,
Yeah,
it's like, oh, let me tell you, I have to tell you. But if I only tell you, you're just a kid full of head knowledge, if you even remember it.
sure.
But
So I
there's
have a
got to
good
be that.
analogy for this.
Yeah.
I think that the analogy is like if I'm walking down the street with my kid, right? There's a couple ways I can do it, right? I could walk kind of with him beside me, right? Kind of holding his hand, and like that makes him think that we're kind of not peers, but like we're side by side in this together kind of thing, whatever. I could walk in front of him and say, "Hey, follow me," in which case all he can really see is my butt, and he just has to blindly trust me. Or I could let him walk in front of me, where I can
It's
still see the
good.
world. I can still see over him. I can still see around him. I can see if anything's coming. But he has a clear view. And while he thinks he's in decision making, while he thinks he is the one in control of his life, I am right there behind him. And the moment he's going to step out on that curb, he's not going to. Dad's going to grab him. The moment that dog was going to run out from behind that fence, he's not going to get you. Dad's going to grab him. Like, but it's the analogy of like, hey, I'm not. I, I want to help you. Of course, I want to be there for my child. Like I'm going to guide them, but I'm going to guide them. I'm not going to direct them. I'm not going to have them follow me every move, and you have to do it my way. It's like, hey, here's the world. How do you see it? Okay, this is this is your goal. This is what you want to be. I'm going to help you get there. Like go. But the moment you're about to step off a curb, I'm going to grab you. And I'm going to say, hey, like, so if it's you're 15 years old and you think that you're about to go to a house party where you're riding with your buddy, and I know that y'all are going to be drinking, you're not about to step off that curb. Like I'll figure out another way. I'll direct you. I'll guide you. I'll tell you, hey, listen, I think a better option is this. I don't mind you going, but I think this is the better way. I trust you, but like I'm always going to be there to guide you. But I've got to let you see the world for yourself, and I've got to let you get close enough to that curb to where you see the car swipe by your face. So you learn the lesson without getting the injury. But it's a tough line. Here's the sad thing.
Yeah.
This is the sad thing for parents to 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 realize, like, you can't do it perfectly. Like no matter what you do, you're gonna leave a void somewhere because you're gonna love too much in one way and not enough in another. You can
Yeah.
have the best intentions in the world, but your kids aren't gonna understand them, and they're gonna impact them however the way they perceive those and whatever the way that their social world has taught them that it means. Um, and so it's tough, but to me, being a parent's like being a Christian. It's like everything in life. You can sit and observe it, and you can think that you have some type of control over it. In which case, you're probably going to pull your hair out because you don't. Or you can sit around, you can observe it, you can do your best to be yourself in that realm. You can do your best to direct and help the loved ones around you, but really, it's acceptance. It's accepting that your kid's going to live a. I mean, think about your parents, right? Think about your parents. You love them, but how much do they really affect your day-to-day life today? Like, I love my parents. I have the greatest parents in the world. I see them once a week, and it's just great. That's more than a lot of people, but like they don't really. It's not the same way that like, their lives do not dictate mine the same way my kids dictate mine. And I don't think parents ever, sit around and think for a second like my kids' life doesn't revolve around me. My life revolves around them, and I have to be so grateful for that. But I can't expect. And then the business owners, right? Let's flip the script again, right? It's my business. My life revolves around that business. I can't expect for that business's life to revolve around me. I can't expect for my employee's life to revolve around the business. Like that's my baby. That's my infant. I've decided to give it life. Now, ideally, it being my little infant, I don't want to have to get up in the middle of the night and feed it every night. I will at first. I'll do whatever it takes at first. But eventually, I want to be a toddler that can sleep through the night. And then eventually, I want to be able to go to school and learn some things and learn some systems and processes and eventually be in middle school or high school and go get a job at Chick-fil-A to where it's like, hey, it's not really paying for itself, but it's giving back. All right. And then all of a
Yeah.
sudden, boom, it's going to college. And it's like, okay, now all of a sudden it gets out of college and this thing's making money. And it doesn't need mom or dad anymore. Mom or dad can step back. And every once in a while, they're going to call mom or dad and say, hey, I got this going on. I don't know what to do. Cool. I'm here to help you, you know, but you just got to stand on your own 2 feet. And that's business. Too many people look
Yeah.
at their business like they, and too many parents do too. Too many parents are trying to raise good children. Not enough parents are trying to raise good adults, right? Like you don't want your kid to be a kid forever. But a lot of times we want them to need us. So we act in a way that they're always going to be a kid to us so that we can help them and save them. That's not what they need. Same with business. A lot
Mm,
of times we want our businesses to have to depend on us because we feel like if it didn't, well, well, eh, the business it wouldn't need me anymore. Where'd my value be? Right. But the truth of it is if we're good parents, if we're good business owners, we're going to nurture that child, that business up to the point where they can feed and support themselves and we can go on a vacation, right? And so eventually it can maybe have some grandkids for us and we can go see them. We can go have fun and same thing with business. Maybe that business merges and gets some acquisitions and has some companies that we own but we never did anything with and we can just go to the restaurant that we bought and enjoy the meal or go to the hotel that we bought and enjoy whatever it is, and
sure.
so to me it's very similar in parenting and entrepreneurship. It's looking at it, seeing what systems are failing, implementing a system, and doing it without judgment, saying, hey, I'm committed to you, I love you, I'm here for the long haul, and I trust that we're going to get where we're going, and I'm just here to support you as much as I need to for as little time as possible. Eventually, you're going to stand on your own 2 feet, and then I can go and have another kid. Then I can go and start another business, whatever it might be.
Yeah.
But that's kind of my thought. I would love for my 13-year-old child to not need me to do anything for him, not me to do the laundry, not need me to cook his breakfast, not need me to do anything. You know, I think that's what we need more of. I know Carlotta Thompson. One of the most impressive parenting feats I've ever seen is the fact that her 16-year-old daughter runs a multi-million-dollar company with zero help from her mom. She is the CEO, decision maker, everything. She hires people, fires people, and she's 16 years old. That to me is one of the most that's impressive. So
Completely impressive. That's amazing. I like that you brought
coming up
up
on an hour here,
to
and my phone's I'm probably like 5%. So I told you I'd give you a
you're about
warning.
5%. All right. That
Yeah,
sounds
I'm sorry,
good.
man.
No,
I'm
that's
so sorry.
good.
I should have had a charger out here.
No, hey, I appreciate you, Cody, just coming in and your insight is there's a lot to chew on with this, and I appreciate the insights and you've been a coach for so long in karate, and you're an entrepreneur, so you get that side of things, and a father. So we're definitely gonna have to have you back on. I feel like I had a lot more other questions that we could have really dove into, and but no,
Yeah, I'm
that was
sorry, man.
great. No,
I,
I
I get to
appreciate it.
talking, and then uh, before long, we've been on here for an hour, and I've just been rambling. I hope that obviously we got probably got a few more minutes. If there's anything was there a question that you had uh, before we got on here that you didn't ask me that you wanted to dive into? Because I'd be more than happy to answer anything. I'd tell you I'm an open book, and obviously I'd love to be
Yeah.
back on. I've loved this experience.
Yeah, let's just save it for the our second interview. Let's
Cool.
no, I think that what we got was great. So um with that being said, you fathers out there, be putting energy and effort into your faith, family, finances, and fitness. And like you heard from Cody, there's ways to use like karate or martial arts to accomplish quite a few of those pieces together, like of community, learning discipline, learning having exercise, and so many good things. So if that's for you, great. Hopefully you learn from some of the insights from a coach who's done this for so many years, and seen so many different parents. Like, support, but don't put on your don't live vicariously through your kids, or don't put on them the pressures that maybe were on you that didn't serve you well, and they didn't bring good fruit in your life. So With that being said, be pushing forward. Like, you are not perfect, but you are actually positionally the perfect father for your kids, the perfect husband to your wife. But now go and serve them well, and do the things that in a year from now you're going to thank yourself for being better and doing the right thing. So with that said, all right, everyone, have a good day, and we'll see you on the next one.
Thank you, Joe.